You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Niki Sims here, joined by CJ. CJ, just to set me straight, how do you say your last name?
Gocher.
Gocher. Okay, thank you. I've said it in my head both ways, Gotcher and Gocher. So it's good to finally get this on the record. Thank you so much.
You're close enough. Yeah, it's hard to get it too wrong.
I know. There are thankfully only like a reasonable amount of letters in there that I can't mess it up too badly.
I mean, Goucher, perhaps. Goucher. Like at some point, we're beyond.
I love it. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're back to talk about a really cool part of the coaching journey, which is when you get to or decide to or kind of ask yourself that question of like, am I actually coaching right now? It's that what CJ just called perfectly the messy middle of going from whatever you've been doing before to now being a coach. Boom.
Boom.
And I think it's actually neat to talk about what those markers mean for you, maybe put an actual kind of point in your journey to say, okay, I'm officially coaching, or maybe it's deciding like, okay, this is going to be a part-time, a full-time, but it's kind of putting some boundaries and some realistic parameters on the journey. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Cool. Right. So in your experience, CJ Gocher, what are some entry ways that people make into the field of coaching?
Well, my start, I guess, was sort of the jump off the cliff and get started. It was a job transition. So I was coming out of the Navy. I had enough stability that I could afford to make a hard leap, but there wasn't really that security there. It's not like I had a job secured, something like that. I fit kind of. I noticed my pattern was very similar to people who make coaching a side hustle, in the sense that whether it's a clean job transition, like your funds are covered by some kind of retirement or whatnot, or you're making a side hustle transition, you're currently secure, but you're only secure for so long. Like you couldn't just, not make any money or totally flop and last forever. So there gets to be this, you can navigate it, but you're either working two jobs or there's an urgency there in how you manage it. So like that's kind of where I started from, and it's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. There's a lot of friends that I know and some coaches that I know, their path was the accidental path. They almost like tripped into it. They have a fantastic deadlift or a squat or, at their local gym, and some people want to talk to them. And next thing they know, it's like they've got a mini crew of like 3 or 4 people. And then somebody calls them a coach, and they're like, they do the double take and they're like, oh, I'm a coach? Like, but then that thought with that identity kind of settles like a coat, and it's like, does this fit? It's like, it kind of does fit. Like, I kind of like this. I might try it. But all those steps have already been taken without boundaries or details. And then how do we navigate that?
Yeah.
And then there's the kind of that classic, like, person who knows. There's the high school athlete, there's the college athlete, professional athlete, like the high school athlete who they're like, I'm going to do an exercise science degree because I like exercise and science. Or the college athlete or pro who their career ends, or they know like they've reached kind of the end of their career. Like it's just not going to progress farther. So they're so familiar with the field. They're in that place. It's like, well, I guess coaching is where I'm going to take this. So I'm sure there are other paths, but those are the 3 kind of that I see most routinely. Sort of that tripping into it, that side hustle job transition, and then that natural path from athlete or, somehow really tied into a sport community.
Yeah, like you're already in the field. Yeah. Mine was kind of similar to yours, where I had a steady job. It was very safe, and I wasn't happy. So I was like, well, I want to be less safe and more happy. And you're right. There's that zone where you're like, I have enough money to last me a certain amount of time. How are we going to make it so that I have kind of replace this income. And that gets to be kind of scary because you really are entering a totally new field. And something that I think is interesting that we're helping people start with now is like, how can you actually treat it more like a business instead of just trying to fulfill your passion? So we get some kind of tools to help you manage that transition successfully, I think.
Well, to start with like the challenges of that particular path, Adam Skillen has a great article on the site, and he managed this because it seems like there's one of two ways. Either you already have a stable job and you're trying to do the coaching thing on the side. So the real urgency becomes, how long can I white knuckle this doing two jobs? Like, how long can I be a full-time banking professional and run 15 online clients or 25 online clients and, private sessions out of my garage gym? And that's high energy. Like, how long can I do this before I just flame out?
Yeah.
Or, people like you and me, it's like, okay, I have all the time in the world, but I've got kind of a runway. As soon as the old job shifts, it's like, okay, I have 6 months. Christina and I knew, we looked at the numbers. I was in the Navy Reserves at the time. And we told ourselves we have four months. One of us two has to get a stable job that pays enough for both of us within 4 months, or I was going to have to volunteer for a deployment. That was our runway.
Wow.
And I'd volunteer for a deployment to make active duty pay. And so that became, what are all these professional steps? How do I schedule a session? How do I do? Because the urgency becomes there.
Mm-hmm. I think something, or what's important about what you just said, is there has to be something really logical in the sense of you need to assign numbers to how long you have to start making money. There needs to be a metric in the beginning to let you know if you're doing this well or if you can make this work. And so even, I think some people, even maybe not everybody, but they'll just take the plunge without knowing what those numbers are. And if you don't know what you need to survive, then you're kind of going to be a little blind, and you might have a real, oh crap moment when you're just like, wait, I've only been charging $35 a session.
This will never work out.
Yeah.
This will only work out if I take 70 clients and there's no way this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I would totally recommend, I love YNAB, but I would recommend something like that where you sit down and you start looking at your big annual expenses. Like, what are the true expenses? What are things that you can give up for a little bit of time? But being really real with what you have to come up with and being really real with what you can do at that point of time as a coach, and start giving yourself some metrics. It's mostly just awareness at that point, I think.
Well, yeah. And when you're operating as an independent coach, it's not multiple gyms, you're not an employee or something like that, but you're kind of on your own. Your personal finance is your business finance. Like, your profit and loss statements, going to Costco is a loss statement. And, each revenue that you pull in from a client is your profit statement. And there's no like the business goes broke, but you're fine. There's no golden parachute. It's all the same pile.
Yeah.
So the good thing and the bad thing about it, I guess, is that if you already have systems in place, if you're already comfortable with managing your money, if you already know where your outlays are, what you're buying, you're not subscribed to 17 different subscription services that you don't need, like you're already relatively tight, then those skills transfer to being a coach for you. But if you don't have those skills, or if they're not managed well, then those liabilities transfer over to being a coach too.
Totally. That'll put you in quite a pinch. Yeah. I like that. What are some other, I guess, what are some mistakes that you've noticed that people can make early in the game or during the transition?
It's a little different depending on which type of transition we're dealing with at any kind of given time. But some of the biggest, at least, like I'd say the biggest, for in my head at least, is going pro too soon.
What does that look like?
So we've talked in several episodes, the VIP episode, how to get started, working with clients on you are not the expert. You never really have to position yourself as the expert who has the answer and But especially when you're new, you may not even be unexpert. You're just more expert than the client. You're just getting started. So, but a lot of people, whichever of those paths that we take, we had role models and inspirations and resources that we pull who are our model for what it looks like to be a coach. But the fact that they're famous enough for us to know who they are, and pull their information and they have respect, means that they've been doing this for a long time. So we are trying to model and copy them, but we're not them. So I see a lot of coaches in the very beginning, they want to have that expert position. They always want to have the answer. They whether that's on the platform with the client, playing down their inexperience, or, playing up whatever little bits of knowledge that they've picked as the truth, or in their practice, like, so-and-so has an Instagram profile that does amazing reels, and this other person I respect, wow, they have a Facebook group that's killing it and blowing up, and this person I respect, they have a podcast, and they end up trying to do all of these things until they don't have the experience to do any of them, and so they're just stretched out.
Yeah. It becomes really diluted about what they can actually communicate because they're trying to be so many things. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think some people will have some experience getting coached or looking at working with people, and they'll think, man, I could do that so much better. And I believe I'm going to do it all better by myself right now. And then they do it just like, oh, wait, running a business is really freaking hard.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I remember one of my first experiences as a professional coach. So again, I'd been coaching people on the side and friends and family and coworkers for some time. And then I made that leap out, and I'm like, I want to work with barbells. I want to work with people who are working with barbells. And in my area, to get hands-on, that was CrossFit.
Yeah.
So I ended up working at a CrossFit gym. And I remember visiting CrossFit gyms and, other things in the local area and watching coaches. And I'm like, oh, I could do so much better than that. Like that exact same feeling, until I'm there on my, second or third day and I have 25 people in a class.
Yeah.
When I'm used to managing single clients, 5 clients, that kind of thing. I'm used to the barbell training model on a rack where you're taking them through the progressions. And now I'm coaching CrossFit, and here's the circus. And all of a sudden, all those things that other newer coaches and the mistakes that they're making, me, a newer CrossFit coach, I find myself giving the same cues, like just trying to raggle the circus instead of delivering coaching. And I'm like, oh, that's
I get
why.
it now. Yep. So being cocky can be useful for motivation, but educate yourself on everything that's involved.
In honor of Top Gun 2, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. Your coaching can't cash.
Yes, so good. I noticed that sometimes people will go in and not have, or they'll go in, it'll be really hard and it'll be overwhelmingly hard, and they won't know if they're doing okay or not. And I think it's useful at that point to remember why you wanted to make the transition and give yourself some sort of measurement check-in to see if you're doing that or not. Like, it could be you wanted to leave your job because you hated sitting around at a desk all day. You wanted to leave your job because you wanted to teach people more. You wanted to improve people's quality of life. You wanted to just interact with people more and be in the gym all day. And so when you're in the grind, it might be tough to know if you're doing that or not. You'll feel really burnt out, like we talked about on another podcast. And I think writing down when you're in that emotional state of, I really want to leave my job because I know I'll be happier. Like, write that feeling down and then look back to it. And you might actually be accomplishing it, but you can't see it because you're kind of just in the trenches. And it's kind of a check to be like, you're doing a good job. Keep doing it.
I like that. And there's it can be really tough when you're, approaching burnout, you're flaming out on final, but that to determine, is this because I don't care about it anymore? Is this because it's not in line with my VIP anymore? Or is this because I'm not doing it well? Like I'm spending way too long on a session, or my overhead is too, or I didn't manage my boundaries in my relationships. And so like I still would love to do this, but it sucks so much just because of how I've arranged it that that it makes it difficult for me to connect with what I really wanted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That reminds me of this great quote I heard about boundaries is like, boundaries are something that you put into place to make you, in this context, it was a person, to make you love that person more. And I think that can be really applicable to the coaching practices. What boundaries can I put in place for myself to make, or for my clients to help me love coaching more? And so if you feel like you're almost falling out of love with that, with your practice, with your daily routine, with any part of your day or any part of your relationship with your coaching, like what things can you move around that actually make you feel excited about it again and make you feel like you can show up fully in that relationship? And I think letting yourself know that even at the beginning, when you're just getting into this, knowing that you can, like we talked about before, do whatever you want. Keep letting yourself like make mistakes, see what you learn, try something again, make mistakes, see what you learn, try it again. Because a lot of these people who are professionals were probably really good at what they were doing. So you've gotten in the groove of being really good at your job. I'm sure that was your situation as well. Or just like, you're like, I'm good. I'm really good at this Navy thing. Like, I got this on lock. And then you go into this other field and you're like, oh, what am I doing? How do I succeed? We get that newbie feeling again.
That's so good. I like that idea of boundaries as helping us love, what we do or that other person. Yeah. For me, the phrase that came to mind, I was reading Niels van der Poel's How to Skate a 10K, and also Half a 10K is like the little subtext. But it's this little pamphlet almost. It's like 30 pages of actual text and then 30 pages of program where he describes the training to win gold medal in the 10K and the 5K speed skating.
Wow.
And he was describing how he stopped thinking as much about the numbers, the percentages, the heart rate, and his coach and him would work on that. But most of the challenge was protecting his joy. Most of his challenge was when training weeks were getting 20 hours, 25 hours. At the most, he was doing 33 hours of training a week.
Holy moly.
With a 7,500 calorie intake every day for that, period. When you just don't want to, your butt doesn't want to be sore on the bike anymore. Like you're just tired all the time. He's like, then ice cream is what I need. Like that protects my joy.
Yeah.
I have to take an off day. That protects my joy. And for coaches, I think we can forget like our joy is worth protecting. Like we to some degree, it's not always going to be fun, but to some degree, we have to enjoy the job.
You have to. Yeah. There are going to be times when like hammering, working 33 hours a week on a bike is the right thing to do. And then you're going to reach a point where that's no longer the right thing to do. And it's going to be the right thing to do maybe again in 6 months, but not right now. There's this book I just picked up called Designing Your Life. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's really cool. I'm just into it. And I thought it would be really interesting for people going through the coaching transition. It's a wonderful book. That's the title would imply. Designing Your Life is helping you kind of be the master of what you're going to do with your days in terms of work, play, love, and health. And it really kind of keeps those 4 compartments in the dialogue the whole time. And it's setting you up to really get to choose what, like in this instant, like what do you want to do with your coaching, and keeping your coaching in line with what you want to do with your play and what you want to do with your health, and making sure those are kind of, you always have a beat on those, because if one of them is running on E, then you're going to feel it and you're going to feel kind of out of whack. And so I highly recommend that book for everybody, Designing Your Life. It's been pretty good.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. There's another book that I was going to recommend to everybody called Principles. I think I've talked about it before, by Ray Dalio. Have you dug through that book at all?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I've read it and familiar with his work. I'm a fan. Yeah,
he says things so succinctly that you read it, you're like, duh. And then it comes up in your life and you're like, oh, mega duh. And so it's like super simple, bite-sized chunks that you will read and then you'll connect to at certain points.
And it's funny that you mention that, because we see it and we're like, duh, it's obvious. I think when thinking about each of those coaching transitions, each of those, different types of coaching, oftentimes the problem isn't that we don't know what to do. The problem is that it never clicks that now is the time that I need to do that thing that I know I need to do.
Yeah.
Like when you trip into coaching, when you find yourself like almost accidentally a coach helping family and friends, because they're family and friends, it never triggers. I need to professionalize this a little bit. I need to protect my budget. I need to get a track for, maybe I need insurance, something like that. When we go from the athlete to maybe I'm going straight from high school into college to be an exercise scientist, like it never occurs to us that this is the pipeline, this is the train. And once the train goes, that's where it goes through college. And then I'm going to get a GA position. And then I'm going to work on a D3 sports team as an assistant coach. And I'm going to work my way up. Like there's the path. And we know that we should be reflecting on, getting feedback loops like Ray Dalio talks about in Principles, and reflecting on our path and checking our VIP. Is this what I really don't want? But because we're on the train and we don't look out the window, it's 10 years down the line, we're struggling to get an actual full, head S&C job that we want for. We're putting in 60, 70 hours a week. And we're like, oh, I should have been doing that all along.
Mm-hmm. Inertia is so powerful. Inertia and aging. You can control one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say for people in that transition period is don't talk yourself out of trying something. Like you could try 50 different things right now. Try one and learn from it, and then try something else. But don't let yourself, what did you say? Procrastinate or something like Procrastinate just by not coaching. Like try something and go back to your metrics. And I think some important metrics for coaching are like, how many people are you working with? What's your income from coaching? How many inquiries have you gotten? Like how many business kind of checklist items have you completed? Go back to that often, but don't let it stop you from actually doing something. Because I think that can happen a lot in this transition time is, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. But really what you're doing with every choice you make is you're taking another step towards something. And by not doing something, you're actually taking a step towards something that you've already decided that you don't want. So try something. You have permission, like CJ always tells you. You have permission to do it.
In fact, if I was to say a second most common thing that I think people do, it's that procrastinating. It's that action faking. It's I ran across, I'm a fan of a particular study, Hartman et al., 2019. I'm a fan of YouTuber CoffeeZilla, and they did an interview, and I'm like, I got to look into this guy's work. But his study was called Towards an Entrepreneurial Economy, not entrepreneurial, but entrepreneurial. And it's about the what he calls the entrepreneur industry, which is the business coaches and web support and auxiliary tasks and the Fiverr agents, who help you out with a billion different things that could be helpful for you as an entrepreneur, instead of the core tasks of earning revenue, managing expenses, delivering a service. So it's everything that supports that. And through his analysis, he found that not only have entrepreneurial businesses, usually freelancers or independent operators, have become less successful in the last 5-10 years than they previously were, but people who consume more entrepreneur resources, they hire more business coaches early. They get more certifications. They pay more for packages and support systems that don't contribute to those core practices. The more people buy into those procrastinations, the less successful they are.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of people who will hire like 3 different strength coaches, and they'll buy a meal prep diet plan, and they'll go to, naturopaths and whatever. They will try and pay for this fitness that they want to have without doing the fitness.
there's so often parallels, whether it's, like between training and coaching.
Yeah.
And it's such a, like the number of people who, and you've seen it. I'm sure everyone in the audience has seen it. We've been it probably.
Oh, yeah.
Where we have 4 sessions scheduled a week. We consistently make 2 or 3 of them. But then we're asking our coach about, hey, what do you think of this supplement? What do you think of, what do you think of cold showers? That's a big thing right now.
Yes.
It's like, can you make it to the gym?
Yeah.
Please?
How about you hit all 3 training sessions? Let's start with there, and then we'll see about those cold showers.
And then we're over here from a business sense buying the cold shower. Like, it's totally, yeah.
Do the reps as the coach. You have to do the reps as the coach. Yeah.
Yes.
Which means for you watching the reps. Yeah. So good. What do you think? You said something here. There's like a risk of going broke too soon, too fast. Would that fit into like trying to pay for those services that you may not need at the time?
Yeah, and it's even so. I mean, going broke is definitely a problem. In the Kickstarter ebook guide that we recently put out, highly encourage you to get that if you haven't yet, because it's awesome.
Free,
free, right?
Yeah.
The 3 things that a new coach really needs to do are to coach, to learn, and to stay in the game. Like, they actually need to get coaching practice. They need to develop some kind of practice of learning that covers the basics first, and it parallels their coaching practice, so it's meaningful learning. And they need to stay in the game, because if they get kicked out of the game, if they don't manage boundaries, so they get terribly resentful, if they any of these different things that happen, they get, they don't have insurance and they get sued, or they don't manage, with their employer, and then they get kicked out of the gym as a coach. Any of these things that, boop, you're out of the game now. You're not coaching, you're not learning. So, and the biggest thing in staying in the game is not going broke. Because so many coaches, we talked about earlier about rushing to go too pro too soon, in the personal financial management skills. I think the biggest going broke problem is you were never going to, your business model wasn't designed well. You didn't think about it, so you were never actually going to be profitable. You if you build it, they will come. You buy this this big business space, and you're like, oh, the market here is great. I'm a great coach. And so everyone's going to come and it'll totally work. But you haven't actually run the numbers that for enough people to sign up for your gym to make it profitable, you would actually need a bigger gym or a different business model or other things going on. And so you keep wondering, like, I'm loving my coaching. I hate the business. I hate the business side of things. I hear that a lot. I love coaching. I hate the business side of things. You're every new client is actually making you more and more broke, or it's just stretching out. It's delaying the process of slowly, going broke. Same thing happens whether it's online coaching or anything like that. For every, let's say you have 40 hours in a week you're going to do to coaching, and because of your systems, it takes 5 hours a week for every client that you've got. It's really inefficient for an online coach. You can only take 8 clients. And if you haven't run the numbers and charged enough to stay solvent with 8 clients, you're going to go broke.
Every new client is making you more broke. That is always something to keep an eye on. Well, it's a good one. Remember that one, folks. That's a good business learning, is like thinking of your resources in the sense of the money that you have and the hours, the human hours that you have. Those are 2 very important resources to keep an eye on.
The time is so key. Because so often we see it happening. We see we're going broke, and we can salvage that by, like, if we decided I can only work 40 hours a week, we can let that boundary slip. We can fudge that. We don't have to be creative. We don't have to problem solve. I can just put more hours in. So I can take on that 9th client or that 10th client. I can work 50 hours a week, and okay, now I'm solvent. Now I'm working a lot. And my energy starts, tanking. I start looking at burnout, and then we go right back down that chute.
Yeah. Then you hate coaching. Well, that's sad.
Yeah, sad. Very sad.
I have one more recommendation for people at this point in their journey, is to write out some core values for their coaching business. For us at Barbell Logic, it's growth, consistency, and connection. And that, like, we started out with some different core values in the very beginning. We had like 10 of them, and we shortened them in the last couple of years because these 3 were pretty consistent with all of our actions and what really drives us. And as we've expanded and as we've grown, it's always helpful to come back to certain things to help you guide yourself in making those choices. Or if you're running into problems and you have, 5 different choices, it's like, which one goes along with my core values? And so if you run into that point, if you're like, you know what, I'm burnt out, I'm pushing my boundaries, go back to these core values and let those kind of guide you for decisions.
Yeah.
Do you think you have core values in your coaching?
I do. And we talked about it a little bit during the VIP episode. There are lesser values, and I have value statements, and I'm kind of constantly reevaluating. Sometimes I edit them, tweak them, But for me, autonomy is a big one, integrity, and then the word that is on my wall, like the word that is posted, is development. But it's probably somewhere closer. The idea is somewhere closer to fitness, in the evolutionary sense, to where I'm not bad. I'm not something that needs to be evolved from. I'm not something that I need to run away from. But there is a better future that I could fit better if I improve in different ways. And that same thought process guides my coaching. My client isn't bad. My client isn't a failure. My client isn't less than because they're not strong yet. But whatever future they see for themselves, that's where we are shifting fit. And those 3, guide my coaching. If I'm not, if integrity, if I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, I'm not going to express that as a fact. Like I can't do that because then I suffer on the back end. Yeah.
Probably helps you protect your joy too, to know that you're working with those values.
It helps.
Yeah.
Now, and you had obviously, I mean, I'm sure you had a big input in the shift in the growth process and change in the core values for the company. Are those similar to yours? Like, because sometimes when we have a leadership input, it starts to like kind of we mold with it, and
totally.
It kind of fits us. Is that similar to yours?
Well, as I was preparing for this episode, I thought about like what I really value about coaching, and I wasn't quite in the core value part of this, but I wrote it down here. Like something about my principle for coaching is, for me, it's human connection that's bound by the team goal of increasing awareness, consistent effort, and achieving growth. So in other words, like what I love about coaching and watching my clients' lifts and programming for them is that it feels like we're on this journey together. And it makes me remember when I left my previous job in construction. It's like I didn't feel like I was working in a meaningful way with another human. But when I'm coaching, I feel like I really am with someone and I'm with them on their journey. And because I love physical effort, I get to be with them for that. And I like that we get to do it for a long amount of time, because it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do in this year? What are we going to do in the next week? Like, it's not just that quick interaction. It's like this team togetherness journey. And
that's so, I love that. Well, and because when I started, so much of my coaching was just on the platform sessions, people flying through San Diego, and they wanted a session. It was a form check. It was a form tune-up. And I might make programming recommendations like we would discuss, but, I'd see them once, maybe twice. And that was fine. It was a whole different world, a whole new world. Anyway, but becoming an online coach and managing, like, people are talking about in my powerlifting meet or my half marathon or my body change goal, I'm looking to have this next year, and that feeling like, oh, we're in this for a year.
Yeah, it's a we thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and we have the time.
About it.
We have the time to walk this and to make changes and to adapt. And if crazy things happen, like a global pandemic, we have the opportunity to troubleshoot and come out better for it, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of going back to your question about if I decided the core values of Barbell Logic, which I definitely had a lot to do with. But what I realized, and when I was preparing to write these, is like your core values are what you do, kind of whether you know it or not. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, scrapping all of our previous core values, what do I see the most in our actions and in our behaviors and in our messaging, and where the actions and behaviors and messaging actually align? And so for me, it was, well, we keep an eye on PRs, we keep an eye on progress, and we provide a lot of education and help people learn how to lift better and how to be better coaches. And for me, that was growth. So it's really important for us to see and contribute to growth. And it's also really important for us to be professional to our clients, like our 24-hour reviews, our programming. And there's always going to be some consistency in some pretty consistent coaching practice across our whole team. So consistency was really important to me. And then connection, like this is all about getting to connect with other people, connect with other coaches, and connect with your clients. So like looking at Barbell Logic from the outside, those were our obvious actions that were driving us, whether we put a label on it or not. So that's kind of where those came from. But they also are very important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. It does tap back a little bit into the VIP podcast in some ways, but there's a fresh piece to that too, in that the when you reflect back, so often when people are making the coaching transition, they have the vision coming from somewhere else of what it should look like. And it's only like, maybe it's in the middle of the struggle, maybe it's just, 3 or 4 years and things are okay, but a client says something like, I really appreciate the way you X, the way you do this. Like, you're the first coach I've met who does blank. And it just kind of blindsides you. It's like, that's almost part of my brand. Like and I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought that differentiated me in any way, but it's been so core to what I do. And next thing you know, you're looking back through the way you do what you do. Maybe you weren't conscious of it then, but over time it's, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we can get totally blind to it. Makes me think of another freaking Ray Dalio quote, is like, try to look at yourself objectively, which is, arguably impossible. So you have to go to others and they'll help you see, or they'll help you realize what you actually do. And it's useful for letting you know about blind spots, but also helping you see what you're really good at. Because I think oftentimes when we're really good at something, we're just like, that's just what I do. And
yeah,
being like, well, no, no one else does that. Like, that's a special part of you.
That is so good. It's so frustrating when you have one of those moments and I'm like, I didn't even know.
Yeah. It's so reassuring, because other times we're just like trying and forcing to be something better than, when really we could also already be really good at. And what if we just went with that?
That's a quote there. What if we could already just be really good at?
Yeah.
And go with that. I love it. Oh, and what's so funny there, it's why we have to coach. It's why, for the athlete who, takes us a detour for 4 years for an exercise science degree, and then they come out and they're really frustrated. Like, I don't feel like I learned anything about coaching. It's like, you got to coach. Like, that's where the feedback comes, the reflection comes. Any feedback that comes from you doing things that aren't coaching could be useful. It might apply. If you're really organized or you're really attentive and listening, like, those general principles apply. But the very precise things that make you an awesome coach, you'll hear that from doing awesome coaching. And the people who you coach kind of express that and appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a mirror, which is fairly useful. I love it. Well, I hope you all are excited to get out there and get some reps in.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's as I was looking back at, on some of my thoughts and some of my notes, I'm like, oh, I sound so disheartening. It's like, don't go broke, own your stuff, like, set your boundaries, like, all that kind of stuff. But really, it is a joyful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keep protecting your joy. Know what it is that got you into this, because it probably was to find some joy. And then always reassess if you're there, and it's okay. You're gonna find times when you pushed a little bit too hard, but that's when you come back to CJ just being like, do this. I love it. Anything else to share?
Not really. I really enjoyed this. That was a lot of fun.
Me too. It makes me even more excited for coaching.
Right?
Yeah. We have great jobs. Okay. Well, if you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, please hop on to wherever you're listening to your podcast and leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it because it helps us get more visible so we can connect with someone else who might really need this in their lives. So thank you so much for listening. And speaking of 5 stars,
I like it.
And speaking of 5 stars, we have some 5-star reviews for these clients who just made it to their 1,000th workout with Barbell Logic, which is, again, I just cannot reinforce how many workouts that actually is over the course of a lifetime. It's so many. So we've got Eric Dahl with our coach, Caleb Krieg. Eric Dahl, I follow him on Instagram. I really love watching him as a lifter. He has this like pretty fun build to watch. He's got kind of T-Rex arms. I hope you're okay with me saying this, Eric. If not, you have full permission to give me some grief. He's got this amazingly huge press. I think he's pressed 300 pounds, something amazing. Bench press, yeah, super strong squatter and deadlifter. Anyway, Eric, thank you so much. And then another Caleb Krieg client is Adam Stevens. And then we have a client of Nick Solin, who is, as you may or may not know, he's like kind of our secret content editor-in-chief. Like, he has produced an insane amount of content. But anyway, it's not about Nick. This is about his client, Shulk von Jarsfeld. I think I got your first name correct. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, but I imagine you and Nick have had a pretty great time together, over 1,000 workouts. So thank you to Eric, Adam, and Shulk for being with us for 1,000 workouts. I can't wait to see what you look like after 2,000 workouts. That'd be pretty amazing. It will be.
Heck yeah.
Okay. And thank you again, CJ, for this wonderful conversation. I love it. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.